Thanks, Laurel. It's so wonderful to be back here. I actually, my relatives on my husband's side are all living here in Vermont, so I get back fairly often, which is great. But to get in front of such an amazingly large audience, I was surprised. I had trouble finding a parking space, and I had remarked earlier, I thought that only happened in Philly. But on a day like today, on a Saturday, a weekend, and seeing so many of you out here, it just makes me want to say, don't you people have anything better to do? Seriously, I am truly impressed, and it's really important that you do give your time like this, and that's why we love Trustees and Friends so much, because your generosity really makes libraries work. And we're going through some tremendously turbulent times, I would say, in terms of change. I mean, it just boggles my mind, and I bet it does yours too. And for some of us, we just sort of stick our heads in the sand and hope it'll all go away, I think. I remember when I was here last time, we talked about the future demise of the book. And boy, was there a lot of pushback. That was never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. And I'm afraid, folks, that it's really on its way, and perhaps more quickly than we ever thought before. If you think of it from the environmental and economic point of view, it's a good thing in a way. Books will be cheaper. They will not destroy forests anymore. Ubiquity will be increased dramatically. And I get a lot of questions, and perhaps you do too, about, well, what's the role of the library then in the digital age? And do we really need libraries anymore? Because everybody's going to have their Nooks and Kindles and iPods and all these ways to download books, and why do we need libraries anymore? And I find that kind of an interesting question, because it really gets at the heart of the fact that people never understood libraries in the first place then. Because what we do is collect, gather, and make available freely to our communities the works and literature and information that's out there, because nobody can afford, very few at least, can afford all the books and materials and information that they'd like to get. And no, as fabulous as the internet is, not everything is on the internet. As you all know, there are information databases that are highly expensive. The state probably procures them for you and then shares them out, a really important role for the state, by the way. I want to say, on behalf of state libraries, I think sometimes they're invisible. They're sort of this invisible foundation that makes libraries, and especially small libraries, really work. So we'll talk a little bit about advocacy at the local level for friends and trustees, but when you think about advocacy, you also have to be thinking about state level advocacy and federal advocacy, because as small as federal dollar is for libraries, it goes to the states, and it really helps the states buy the materials and support the services that you all just see as transparent services, like interlibrary loan information databases, regional consultants, all of that. So you need to be, I think, not only aware of what's happening on the local level, but the state and national level as well, because if state libraries disappeared tomorrow, I can promise you libraries across the country would be closing their doors. They just wouldn't be able to keep up the kinds of services they currently do that are provided by the state. So keep that in mind. And one other thing that the state does is provide opportunities like this for you to come together and learn new ideas and share best practices, so that's really good. I do review books, getting back to the ebook. I review books, and I get the hard copy, advanced reader's copy, and guess what? I just got calls from a number of publishers saying, would you accept downloads for the ARCs? Because we're not going to be publishing ARCs anymore. They're very expensive. They're short runs. So I see that as the real tip of the iceberg. And if I get asked again in a couple of years, I think that we will have seen a flip in the number of books published digitally and those published in print. So as dismaying as you may find that, and I do too, because I am of the generation that loves books, have a sentimental attachment to books. I don't read very well on the, I still print things out, on the computer because I need to go like this. But the generations right behind me, that's just not the case anymore. I think, this is my thought, and it could be wrong, but what's it Yogi Berra said? I don't like to talk about predictions, especially when it has anything to do with the future. But here's my prediction. I think small libraries are really perfectly situated to be absolutely critical information providers in this new world. And the reason I say that is because I think space is going to be much less an issue than it used to be. When I was the director of the Norfolk Public Library, Norfolk's a fairly small geographic area. We had a main library and 11 branches, and many times the branches were 6 blocks away from one another. Well, at the time, this was 10 years ago, and yeah, we just had started kind of getting into the internet at that time in libraries, and Gates had just started putting out their computer labs so that people would have access. But nobody was really foreseeing the death of the book or the end of the book at that time, at least not generally speaking. And so I felt like all these little branch libraries were redundant because we had to have the same collection, basic core collection, 11 times over, and here they were, some of them within walking distance. So my big idea was to consolidate, a number of them and have anchor branches. And I didn't get very far with that. We got one anchor branch, and I think that's good. But you know what? I'm kind of glad I didn't get what I wanted, because now we have this incredible infrastructure that penetrates throughout this community. And Norfolk is it's an interesting community. It is half black and half white. The black community tends to be very poor. The white community tends to be very rich. What happened is, in 1964, when busing was mandated for Norfolk, the white middle class took off for Virginia Beach. Just sucked them right out, because they didn't want their precious little white children going to school with, black kids. So what that left was the landed gentry, the whites, who sent their kids to private schools, so they didn't care, and the poor black community that didn't have the mobility, the same mobility. So now we have this community over there that is really in need of library services, probably more than anybody else, because so many of them do live in poverty, and they've got this wonderful infrastructure, 11 branches all over the place in a main library. And as they need less and less shelf space for books, I think they're going to be perfect community centers and information centers, and they're going to be able to get the same kinds of services they always did, but they'll be digital. So I want to try, as pushing 60, so you know, but I am a book person, I want to try to be excited, and I think we all should, about the positives of this new digital age. And so let's talk about some of that. One of them is that self-publishing is going to really take off, and already has. In fact, I went to the Book Expo in New York, and the booth that had crowds and crowds and crowds around it all day long was a booth that had speaker after speaker of self-published authors telling how they did it. So, and some of them have really broken out. I mean, I'm not going to ask how many of you have read Shades of Grey. I'll just look at your faces. I read it. I will admit I read it first. I had to. I mean, how could you not with everybody talking about it? And yes, I learned some new things. But I did find the books very tedious, actually. It's like the author found some really cool words, and the first time I heard them, I thought, that's a really cool word, and then she used it 500 more times. So, I mean, I got it. I don't think I need 2 or 3 unless somebody wants to tell me.
Yes, you do.
Oh, I do? Okay. All right. Okay, so but you see what self-publishing can mean, and especially, again, in rural and small areas where there probably is so much undiscovered talent, but no outlet for these people. And now, all of a sudden, there's going to be not only libraries where you collect information, but libraries where you can create as well. And how many of you have heard of like the whole makerspace thing? Yeah?
We just talked about it, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Well, I'm gonna do my best. Being out of libraries, and I read, but being out of libraries kind of puts me it's like the professor who tells you how it works on the practical level. I'm not sure I have it all completely right, but what I see in the literature is libraries, as I think they will, not yet, but will be gaining more space within their libraries, because I think that in time the books will not be taking up so much of that. They're creating community spaces where people come together and create and make things. And at first I was thinking, here we go, it's kind of like lending tools again, which I always kind of felt like, you know, how do you have tough enough time, right, making the case to our funders about how important it is for an educated society to have lifelong learning opportunities and access to all kinds of information so they can be self-governing and good citizens. I mean, it seems obvious to us, but we're always making that case. So now I'm thinking, yikes, we have hard enough time with that noble cause. How do we say the knitting circle is really worth the tax dollar? And I think that there's some issues with that, but as I've been reading more and more, it's not quite that simple. It's people coming together and really learning together. I mean, it's science projects together. It's bike repair, radio repair, computer programming. It's all kinds of things going on. That's like another aspect of continuing education, more in three-dimensional. And I think, I'm really still formulating this, but I really think that creating information and accessing information that never before was available because people are going to be self-publishing, and coming together and creating that sort of hands-on learning kind of comes together in a way. I'm really excited to see how this all works for the future. I'm not sure. But I don't think it's as trivial as I originally thought about let's get together and have a knitting circle and then let's go sell that to our mayor. You know, I don't think it's like that. I think it's kind of more sophisticated than that. And I think it's also important, and always has been, and probably again, mostly in rural areas, much more so in rural areas, that the library is a community gathering place. And that is so critical, I think. That face-to-face, as everything continues to go online, I have never been a fan of online degrees, and I still am not. I do webinars and Skyping and all of that stuff all the time, and I feel flat every single time I do it because I don't know if people are rolling their eyes at me. I don't know if they're going, man, you got it, girl. I don't know any of that stuff, so I'm just sitting there talking out into the black hole, and I don't think learning occurs very well in that environment. And you can disagree with me, people have, since online learning started. I think in certain cases it's good, but not degrees. I mean, I really am chagrined. I don't want my doctor who got a degree at the Phoenix University. Really, I don't. Anyway, I think as we get more and more online, it almost makes the need increase to get together face to face and share ideas and share thoughts and share, you know, the making of things in 3D. So I'm kind of excited about it and see it as something different. Tell me about your conversation in the car.
Well, it was Michael. I was riding with Michael Roach over, and he had actually, the Hope Library at Danville just got a very exciting gift, and we're going to create a community center in a building next to the library. And so there's a lot of conversation about what will happen in this building. And that was one of the things that we talked about that I never heard about. And I'm glad to have you expand on it. I think it's very interesting.
It is very interesting, and I want to see what happens. It's really in its infancy right now. Do you all know about the 3D, what the heck is that? Really, how does that work? Somebody explain it to me in English. You put a bunch of stuff in a machine and it comes out in what?
Well, you put plastic, basically plastic powder.
Okay.
And it reads a three-dimensional CAD drawing, computer design drawing, and it shoots out the plastic powder three-dimensionally. So it builds an object from a computer diagram, like a printer shoots toner powder out and does it flat on a piece of paper. This shoots plastic powder out and builds an object three-dimensionally inside of a box or a giant box.
And people are using it, I think, one thing I read about is people like you can do spare parts for your machinery that is broken down. You can design a spare part, yeah.
And so I just wanted to add that people are making patterns for these things, open source patterns.
Yeah.
So you go on the internet to find something, and then the other piece is you can't just go into Walmart and buy a 3D printer.
Yeah.
So you also get the pattern with the soldering diagrams and the circuitry to make it. And I just want to add that it doesn't have to be plastic powder. They have them with chocolate too.
I mean, it's incredible. incredible. It's just incredible what's happening with technology. And I think, one of the things that trustees can really do for their libraries is stay involved about what's happening and not be afraid. Find the excitement in what's happening. And I know from having lived in Vermont and having this strong connection to Vermont that perhaps one of the most important issues for you is protecting the environment. So as we say goodbye to a huge millions and billions of books being published in paper, say hello to trees, I think that there's a really exciting trade-off about that. And though we are used to the book, let me tell you, my kids don't give a hoot what kind of format it comes in. They'll listen to it, they'll read it they'll read a book, they'll read it on a computer, they'll take it however it comes. And so, even though we are dismayed, nobody behind us is. They are pretty much format-free people. So as things continue to evolve, and that's been their life too. The formats have continued to evolve. They've gone from the book to the CD-ROM to the little Walkman to video games. So they've seen a continuous evolution of how information is provided and how entertainment is provided. So format is just not an issue for them anymore at all. So we need to get behind that and be excited that our tiny libraries that we never felt were quite, we're always working for editions or bigger libraries, that we may be positioned to actually be just right as community centers. Because one thing about small libraries that I think is wonderful, especially for people who are heavy library users, they'll go to New York Public or they'll go to Waterbury Public. It doesn't matter. They're library users. They'll go anywhere. But people who are a little bit intimidated, those underserved, that the inclusion committees were, it's much nicer to go into a little tiny library where you can kind of see everything and you see the people and you're welcomed when you come in. So you also have that wonderful opportunity to engage your communities in a much more effective way than before. So I find the digital revolution more exciting than scary. And I'm just being really honest with you because I think it's my age that makes it a little bit scary. Now, friends, what are we going to sell? That's my biggest worry. Chocolate. Chocolate's the answer to everything. Well, I'm hoping too that, I've collected all these, one of the things my organization does, which is so exciting, is that we have author programs. So I have hundreds and hundreds of ARCs, advanced readers copies, signed. So I'm thinking, okay, they ain't making any more of them. That's going to be, that they may be worth something someday. So friends, you might have a little, a 10-year, a decade until the materials run out, and then you have to start with the chocolate. And the other opportunities. And I do think it's important. We talk, I think it was Marty who said, we're being more and more creative all the time about revenue enhancement because it is tough to run libraries on just tax money alone, more so than ever before. I always felt, I thought originally, and maybe some of the rest of you did too, that back in the early 90s, late 80s, when things started kind of going digital, not necessarily online. What was it? Something at night? I remember that back when I was in Middlebury. You could get a subscription to this online program, but we could only do it at night because they gave it to us for a really... Do you know what I'm talking about? I see your head. Anyway, there was some online service, even when I was in Middlebury. I just don't remember. If I said it, you librarians...
VRS style.
VRS, yeah, at night. And we could only get it at night because they were selling it for a really high price to everybody else. Well, that lasted for really a short period of time. Then it was the CDs, and encyclopedias came out on CD-ROM and everything. And then we started networking our computers and automating our catalogs. And then came the internet, and really, it's been full speed ahead ever since. So, what was my point? Oh, I remember. Okay. So back in those days, I thought, well, finally, we're going to get the funding we need because we're at the leading edge of providing digital information to our communities. No one else was doing it then. We're going to finally have some clout. Well, that lasted for about 6 minutes because right away, like mushrooms came all these enterprises that, quote, compete with libraries. So you could get those resources elsewhere, and pretty soon the curve was being pushed so fast beyond us that we kind of lost, I think, that. Not only did we lose it, but we didn't capture it in the first place. Libraries, librarians, and I guess I have to blame it on librarians, of which I was one, really, and this has been our failing, I think, all along as funding has declined for us, have failed to really make the case, to lead the charge, to help trustees understand what they need to tell the funders, why it is we're so important. We don't like to brag, but we missed that boat. We should have been bragging. We should have been, united all around saying we are the leaders in information technology. Finally, we're the ones, but we kind of didn't. We didn't do that. We might advertise that we had it, but we didn't advertise that made us leaders in the information technology world. And so I think that ship sort of sailed along with sort of rising competition from private enterprises. So here we are in a world where our services are really diverse. We still have books, we have online books, we have CDs, we have e-books, we have, videos, I don't know. We have a wide variety of formats and services. And we're still operating on the same budgets that we did when we only loaned out books. One stream of service. It wasn't expensive, really. Somebody to develop the collection, somebody to loan the books out, bring them back, somebody to answer reference questions, but it was a single stream. Now it's not, and it's very expensive. That's just the bottom line. What we do is more important, as important, maybe even more important than ever before, but we're still trying to provide a whole new world of services on yesterday's dollar. And again, that's the case I think that we have to make for our communities, our community leaders, is that we do provide a very unique service, and that's really important because very often when we get cut, it's because our funders, it's not because they don't like libraries. Libraries are nice little places where people go and read romances. I think that is still out there. But it's that they feel like there are alternatives. So that if they cut the library, people can still get what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. And it's just not true. Yeah.
It's also the people that run these things for you, and the effort that it takes to learn how to do it, keep it running, fix anything that doesn't work on the computer, is teach you how to do it.
Yeah, if you have been really paying attention to the library world, and of course you have, it's education daily. On the one hand, as a librarian, I'm really glad that I'm not working in a library because of my age. I don't know if I could keep up with it, honestly. I'm just saying, that's me. I mean, it's a lot going on. You have continuing education for librarians is something that's just gone through the roof. If I were a new librarian, if I were a young person, there's no place else I'd rather be because it's changing daily and you have to get continuing education daily and it's always something and it's wonderful. So I think that we really are in the eye of the storm in terms of libraries. And I think we're still in a position where we could be eliminated. We're really just a hair's breadth away from that unless we make that strong case. Luckily, though, if we can't convince them of our importance, we can't convince them that we've got the numbers. Yeah, Jerry.
We have to reassert our traditional relationship with publishers again so that we can get that ebook content.
Absolutely.
Because right now we're being served by Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Overdrive.
At a reasonable cost.
But that should be easy. I mean, it should be, because if we deal directly with publishers and we have a distribution system that's set up to receive the ebooks, protect the copyright, like Jamie LaRue was doing in Barnes County, that's the model we have to go with.
Yeah, so go ahead. I bet you there are people in the room that don't really understand what's happening in the background of ebooks. Many publishers are not even selling to libraries. That's number one, because they're afraid of piracy and they don't know how to control it. And as one publisher told me, we're scared to death. We just don't know where our profit margin is going to be. We don't know where we're going to be tomorrow. They're moving. The publishing industry is not known for being fleet of foot. So that's one thing. The other that are selling to libraries are selling at astronomical prices, making it really, really difficult. Or, as in the case of one publisher, limiting how many times an ebook can circulate before it disappears from the library's virtual shelves. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done with publishers to help them understand that libraries are a phenomenal market for them, and nothing's really changed. Yeah.
Now, I'm an older librarian. They went through that with audiobooks. You know, we already did that. I don't understand this, frankly, because, you know, when audiobooks first came out on cassette, they all freaked out about selling them to libraries. So
That's when their, you know, their growth in print was still there in terms of their sales. Now it's, you know, this latest merger.
Yes, Penguin and Random House merge. This is not good. This is not a good thing. This is going, and I'm sure it's going to be challenged in court. I hope it will be, because once you create those kinds of monopolies, then our ability to buy at a reasonable price is going to become even more at risk, I think. So that's, you know, when I said you have to keep your eye on the national picture as well as the local, as trustees, you kind of really do. Yeah.
I mean, I would be interested in, I mean, you don't really own the book.
Right.
There's, that you're leasing it, and so we don't have this ability to have collections that remain,
Right.
that people can sort of count on, and that can be taken away at any time. I mean, I guess there are contractual arrangements.
Yeah,
so
the way it is now.
Yeah,
we can-
they're licensed for the book, so
Right.
we really, I mean, and I think trustees, I don't know, in my library, I think we're learning about this, but I think the trustees, some of my trustees may have a feeling that, oh gee, everything's available on an ebook, it's cheaper to do it that way, and just get rid of all this material that we have, and yet we're really, all of us are really struggling with what do we own? How do we circulate this? And if you don't have a reader, if you're a person in your community who can't afford an iPad, or you don't have access to that material anymore. So for us, there was an article recently about the ethical aspects of it, in terms of the values we place on access for everyone.
These are such wonderful points, and I think they need to be talked about too at the local level, because it does, do you throw away your book collection, and when do you throw it away? And I really feel like we're really just coming out of the womb on this. So
I have a blogger in Brattleboro who goes online and says how badly we were displaying our new books and giving up all the space to the computers, and, you know, like, if we started to move in that direction.
right, I don't think it's time yet. I don't mean to say it's time yet. I hope, thank you for even bringing that up, because we're not there yet. That's what I say, you know, I don't like to predict when it has anything to do with the future, but I really think that, you know, it's heading in that direction quickly. And I believe that those issues are going to be resolved. They're not going to be resolved in favor of the libraries, though, unless librarians and library supporters band together and really make their voices heard. One of the ways you can do that right now is to contact your U.S. Congress people and let them know that this is an issue. Educate them about it, because a lot of them probably have no idea what's going on. There's a lot of incoming for these folks. There's a lot of stuff they know and don't know. And we need to make sure that they understand the implications for libraries and access to knowledge and information, as the publishing industry, with all its big bucks, is trying to make leasing versus ownership, and, you know, they're trying to take away the doctrine of first right. What is that called?
First sale.
So if you own it, you own it, you know. I love on the ARCs they say, not for sale, and then they're every so often on the listserv they say, you can't sell them, they told you can't sell them. That is such BS, you know. They gave it to you, I signed no contract, you know, this is mine, and I can do whatever I want. If they don't like that I sell it and it cuts into their profits, tough, you know, I don't care, that's not my issue. So yeah, when right now the copyright gives some fair use protections, and it gives the rights to share, and a lot of other things that are really important to us that the publishers are trying to move away into this leasing world, so that copyright rules don't necessarily apply, and fair use rules don't necessarily apply, and the rights of ownership don't necessarily apply. So
There must be a team of people at ALA.
A lot, I was just gonna say that, there are
40 hours a week.
absolutely, but you know what? And there are some really strong working groups that even include some corporations, and they're working even with some of their publishing sponsors who are friends of theirs to try to, where is the halfway mark, where can we meet? So, but ultimately, as always for libraries, the opposition has deep pockets. We don't have deep pockets, but we have voices. We absolutely have voices. So we can take our numbers and make sure that our legislators understand what's at stake for fair use and access and ownership for collections in this new digital world. Because they're basically, I mean, looking out, we've got a pretty nice mix of ages, but I'm going to say we're probably fairly representative age-wise of Congress. And a lot of them are just like me, kind of, yeah, I'm excited about the digital age, and when do I get to retire? Yeah, okay, I think streaming is the future. And again, it's the producing. It's the creating things you don't need to create. It's an extra layer of cost for the publishers. I still watch lots of DVDs, especially when I travel. I was sure when I got my ultralight that it had a DVD drive. Many of them don't, because I like to watch movies when I'm, on the road and stuff. Not when I'm driving. But on the other hand, I subscribed to Netflix about 3 years ago, and we stopped down cable and everything else. We just completely cut the cord, because we can see what we want to see when we want to see it on Netflix, or get the DVD, and we have the dual role. So I think we're in that transition time. I think we're just right where Netflix is right now. You have that dual service, streaming and DVDs. But I don't think I think they're going to be the same as the book. Why produce something that costs more when you can charge the same amount essentially, and your production costs are almost minimal, almost eliminated.
But one of the questions I think is movies. I mean, in my small town, the issue is, do I want to be in competition with, there are some local businesses that actually are renting out movies. If you have a library card, you get them for free. I feel a little uncomfortable with beefing up that collection.
I think video stores started when I was in Middlebury, and they were the VHS video stores. And we had a video store in Middlebury, and we had this conversation about the competition. And no sooner was that conversation over than the video store calls and says, can we give you, for your collection, our second runs? Because what they understood was the more people started watching movies, the more customers. So if you're going to say you're competing with them, then then shame on us for competing with bookstores.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. So one of the agreements, gentleman's agreement we had, was that we wouldn't, nor could we afford, first-run films, which is their bread and butter.
Yes,
and they actually asked us if we would take the second runs for free. So they got it immediately, the symbiotic relationship, and it worked really well. So we didn't get the first runs, we couldn't afford them anyway, and so everybody was happy. And we did a lot of collection of small independent movies that are, at that time, our video stores did use. Yeah.
And I'm still wondering if there still isn't some way that lending is a possibility if libraries move the object of our funding away from books on CD, which I find are very expensive.
Yeah.
One title. For two titles, you can buy a small Kindle or a relatively basic Kindle, put 20 books in a particular genre, have 5 of those for that genre, and constantly build your lending into the devices, making it possible for people who cannot afford to have them, or the sadness, lend those items. And you're still lending, maybe not in the same way, but you're still lending in a very...
Yeah, you're lending the delivery device and the content, which is what a book is.
Right.
So, so if you didn't hear that, and lots of libraries are going in this direction, and I really like it, are buying devices, the little Kindles, and I think you can get them now for as low as even $89, and probably that is going to continue to drop. And you buy that, and you can put, I love the idea of genre collections on it. So you have a romance Kindle, or you have a mystery Kindle. That's really, I hadn't heard that before, the genre idea. That's really cool. So a lot of libraries are lending out the device, yeah.
But it depends of audio, what I call audio books, because I've been always a huge fan and still am. Because, you know, it takes a fair amount of work to produce a decent audiobook. And, you know, it's like producing a mini play in some ways. And to me, they are incredible, and I love them, and I don't want them to go away. So,
Oh, they're not going away.
No, you
I don't think they'll ever go away. In fact, I think they're going to continue to grow, but we're talking about how are they going to be delivered. And I think they're going to be delivered digitally only and not in that. Yeah, no, I think they'll always be. They're gorgeous. I'm a big fan too. I think as we get busy, and you mentioned travel, we are a very busy working people, much more so I think than ever before in our history. And audiobooks play in perfectly to that kind of a lifestyle. Yes?
3 weeks ago, we had a literary festival in Brattleboro that was offered by Richard Mason, several other books, but he has basically entered into a kind of a new business of creating a new type of ebook called Illumination. And his book, The History of Pleasure, has been put into that format, and it combines both text, audio. You can click on the bottom of the page, and it will be his voice reading the page, as well as video in the same book.
Yeah, multi-format publications, whereas the book, and then you click on this hyperlink, and then you get this. Suppose you're reading something about the Civil War, and you click on this link and you get Ken Burns talking about, you know, this aspect, and then you come back and then later on you get pictures of the battlefields and that sort of thing. So really a lot of different formats embedded into one thing. It's really exciting. I mean, it really, if we can just take ourselves away from the book that we're used to, because, and I know, I say, well, picture books. Surely always there will be picture books. But then I see my colleague who's got this little 3-year-old who's sitting right on her lap, loving, comforting, and they're doing exactly this. There's music with it, and the illustrations move, and they're still reading the book, and it's just like, I need to really get past my prejudice about the format, because there's some really, really exciting things going on in the publishing world, in the digital publishing world. I mean, those of us of a certain age, luckily we're going to die pretty soon. I am so conflicted. You all don't know how conflicted I am. Here I just told you I am this total online library user, and I still don't want the book to go away.
Well, you know, when you're young, it's a tactile thing, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't
It's not gonna go
know, for
away.
younger people,
They
but
don't-
the children's books, to have your own book that you can have whenever you want, you don't have to push a button, you don't have to turn anything on. It doesn't matter whether things pop up. If that's your favorite picture, or, you know, your folks or whoever read it to you, it is priceless. And
Thank you.
I
So
really
picture books are
do.
never going away. Will you try to be back in 3 or 4 years?
So keep it all mine.
The analogy that I'm impressed with is candles. So we don't use candles for light now. But a lot of us have candles. We use them for ceremonies, we use them for romance, we use them for weddings and for church. So candles have become really special. They have a different meaning. And I think books are going to be the same way. You know, we're going to have journals, we're going to have the first book I gave you because I love you.
Right.
Those things are going to be really powerful, but it's not going to be the printed word the way we're used to it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said for what types of books do remain, because I don't think books are going to totally go away. And picture books may be one, I don't know, but I do feel like coffee table books or certain kinds of leisurely, and maybe that's sort of similar because so many picture books are truly works of art. If you haven't had the pleasure of going through some picture books, as trustees, you need to go down to your up or over to your children's department, I'm thinking my library, and have your children's librarian show you some of the great books that are coming out. So there's certain things, yes, that you really want to ponder over and flip back and forth, and I think that there will be certain types of books that remain. But if you look at who's in charge really of the future in this regard, it is the publishers, and if you put yourselves in their shoes, you have to say, what would cause me to spend all this extra money when I can sell both items for the same price? Let's hope it's the same price in the future. So you have, so when you understand that that's really the engine driving this, then you have to understand that there's not just our perspective on it, but there's another perspective on it. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun to have this snapshot. But last time it was like, no, sorry, you're wrong, they're never going to go away. And now we're saying, well, some haven't happened. Picture books, we'll see. We'll see in another couple of years how it goes. But I think my main argument to all of you is it's exciting times, they're scary times, economically they're challenging times, but they're above all really exciting times for information development, content development, information access, all information ubiquity. It's really exciting. Our job on the ground is to make sure that we still have equal access to all people regardless of format, that libraries can afford it. We need to be excellent advocates. We need to help our funders understand that our services are still unique, that we are providing what we've always provided. The only thing that's changed is format. And not only that, but now we have access to a whole lot more patrons that we never had before. Patrons with disabilities who had hard times getting into libraries, patrons who are busy and their work lives don't match library hours, but can still go online at night and download a book from your library. We are doing what we've always done. We're doing it better. We're doing more of it. And there is no competition out there for exactly what we're doing. And it needs to be funded because in democracy, everybody needs to have access, equal access to information, and that means without having to pay for it. So I feel like my time is up. Before I scare you anymore, thank you again so much for coming. I think it's fantastic that you did take time out from your weekend to come here. It's really terrific. Libraries are lucky. Thank you.